Live stream audio check. Live stream audio check.
I can hear you.
Audio check.
Good afternoon. Call everyone to order, please. We're starting a couple of minutes after 2:30. I'd like to welcome everyone here to the new council chamber this afternoon for a meeting of the executive of North Somerset Council. I'm Councillor Steve Bridger, leader of the council. There's an option to join the meeting via Microsoft Teams for those councillors or officers who do not feel comfortable attending in person or are unable to do so. They will be able to participate in the meeting online, but will be recorded or not be recorded as formally in attendance. So we're streaming today's meeting live, and a recorded version will be available as usual, usually in a short period of time on the North Somerset Council's YouTube channel. So I will now move to the formal agenda. It's a long one. I can't even count the items on all my fingers and all my toes. So item 1, addresses by members of the public. I believe there are none. Thank you, Nick. Item 2, apologies for absence. None received. So I think we're all present and correct. I would, though, as I like to do, invite my exec colleagues to introduce themselves very briefly as a way of getting our attendance into line. So we'll start with you, Councillor Bell.
Hello, I am Councillor Mike Bell, the Deputy Leader of the Council and Executive Member for Adult Services, Health and Housing.
Hi there, Councillor Mark Caniford, the Executive Member for Placemaking and Economy.
Good afternoon, I'm Councillor Ash Cartman, I'm the Executive Member for Corporate Services.
Good afternoon, I'm Councillor Catherine Gibbons and I'm the Executive Member for Children's Services, Lifelong Learning, Skills and Refugee Resettlement.
Good afternoon, I'm Councillor Bridget Petty. I'm the Executive Member for the Climate Emergency and for Engagement.
Hi, Councillor Steve Hogg, Exec Member for Highways and Transport.
Good afternoon, I'm Councillor Mike Solomon, Executive for Neighbours and Community Services.
Thank you, everyone. Much appreciated. Moving on to item 3, which is our friend Standing Order number 37, Declarations of Disclosable Pecuniary Interests. Anyone? Don't think so? No. Moving on to item 4, which is the minutes from our last meeting on the 7th of December 2022. So I'm assuming there are no comments or amendments from colleagues. So I'm just looking for, well, to another colleague to propose, well, I'll propose acceptance. Can I propose acceptance? And seconded by Councillor Mark Caniford. Thank you, Mark. Are we all in favour? Thank you. Item 5, non-executive councillors' addresses. Nick. Right, okay, you didn't advise us in advance, Karin, but...
Oh, sorry, I raised it with the executive member in advance, but I should have...
Is it a point you want to make on an item that's on the agenda today?
No, it's another one.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Is it brief?
Fairly brief, yeah.
Go on,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, it's an issue with regards to ash dieback, just an environmental issue, and it's addressed to Councillor Solomon. I've raised it by email already with him, and it's basically came as an issue in our local area, but it has whole country implications. And it's the guidance from the Forestry Commission, and I'd really like this council to write and ask for more detailed guidance, because it's I've had a chance to read it now, and it's very ambiguous. It doesn't specify the criteria for felling mature ancient woodland ash trees. And there's been one area in on the southern edge of the Mendip Hills, which has been really decimated, where logging was prioritised over biodiversity. And I'd just like this council to establish some clarity with the Forestry Commission whether there shouldn't be a number of mature trees left behind when they're logging licenses. There are some other specific issues to this particular site, but it's a general one that I wanted to raise, that we need clear guidance of how to make sure that ancient woodlands aren't decimated and destroyed, especially in view of our declaration of a nature emergency. I think it's really, if you look at the guidelines from the Forestry Commission, I'll just read that one sentence which shows you how ambiguous it is. It says, with the exceptions of felling for public safety or timber production, we advise a general presumption against felling living ash trees, whether infected or not. So generally not felling them, but then timber production, and timber production has clearly been prioritized in that bit of ancient woodland, and it's been really devastated. It used to be, it's a centuries-old piece of woodland which has been completely decimated. And I think we need more guidance on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Havison. Refer that one, I think, to Councillor Solomon, and we've got Gemma here as well, but not really, I think, to be answered in today, unless you want to make a brief comment,
I'll
Mike.
be very brief. I was aware of this because it's in my ward, so as well as my portfolio, it's my ward. It is down to the Forestry Commission, as Karen quite rightly says, and we did send our own enforcement officers in, but it really is Forestry Commission, and we asked residents at that time to also write to their MP, John Penrose, to try and put pressure on the government. So I wholeheartedly agree with what Karen is asking for. We do need more clarification because it is taking the mick a bit. The work that was done up there was excessive. So yes, it needs more clarification.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, let's move on. Item 6 on the agenda, matters referred to the executive and not dealt with elsewhere on this agenda. I don't think there are any of those. Item 7, West of England sub-region, items not dealt with elsewhere. Again, none. Item 8 is the forward plan. So this is the 4-month period commencing the 1st of March, which I think was published at the very end of January. Again, on the record and for noting, so unless there are any questions or comments from colleagues, just looking for a signal that everyone's happy with the forward plan. Thank you. Okay, now moving forward to the substantive items. When I say substantive, I mean substantive, and is now with this next one. So item 9, bus service improvement plan, which is a big update. Everything's there. Steve, are you taking this with item 10 as well? Are you taking those together?
I think we'll take them together,
yeah, so
but I'll cover them off separately, but we'll take them together.
So item 10 is commissioning and procurement plan for the BSIP bus priority scheme, supply, installation and maintenance of AMPR cameras. So yeah, if you could take those two reports together. Steve, over to you.
Thanks a lot. So you were rattling through the agenda up until that very moment. Yeah, we've got about 200 pages to get through. So page 1, paragraph 1. I'll keep it fairly brief. I mean, although it's a very weighty, a very fulsome document, I don't think there's anything particularly surprising or controversial in here. There's a lot of good news, and there's a lot about this that I'm supremely excited about, given that we first started talking about BSIP, certainly when I came onto the exec. So with BSIP plans well underway, we've got our funding secured, and we find ourselves heading into the election period just at the same time as we need to update our BSIP and extend it for another 3 years. So the timing isn't exactly great in terms of the clash with the election period. The report contains a number of delegations and approvals. It is very long. However, Carl and his colleagues have done a fantastic job in providing us with a shortish summary of about 1,200 words, which contains most of the detail that we'd need to refer to. But essentially, I'm seeking your support today for approval of the following. So number 1, to approve a 3-year extension to the public transport dynamic purchasing system so that we can continue to provide contracts after it expires in September 23. Number 2, to approve the initial deployment zone for DRT, and note that it's a trial and will require some flexibility as we continue to get intelligence around its usage, around passenger feedback and around capacity. And 3, to endorse the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding with WECA and North Somerset Council to ensure a joint governance arrangements between WECA and North Somerset Council. And then there are a few delegations here. Number 1, to delegate the contract award of BSIP Design and Build to the Director of Place, as advised by the Section 151 officer, principally due to the timing that I talked about, the pre-election period, and only valid during this period. Number 2, to endorse the current iteration of the draft Enhanced Partnership Plan and Scheme as consulted, see Appendix 2 for that, and delegate to me in consultation with Place Panel authority to approve the final iteration on behalf of North Somerset Council. And number 3, to note the current updated version of BSIP and delegate authority to me to approve this iteration following the scrutiny session which took place earlier last month, 20th of January. Also to note some amendments to the revenue budget. Number 1, increase the revenue budget in the current year by 1.2 million from the BSIP grant, as per the delegation approval back in June. And then again, 6.7 million in 23-24 and 5 million respectively in 24-25 to be funded by BSIP. And I think the key point is the number of delegations are due, for the most part, to the fact that we've got BSIP materialisation and mobilisation smack in the middle of an election period, and there are so many moving parts to BSIP. It's such a hugely encompassing piece of work that there are going to need to be lots of decisions made at pace, and given the shortened timescales, which I'll come on to shortly, I think the only practical way of doing that is through these delegations and approvals that I talk about. We've talked a lot about BSIP, so there's a huge amount of detail in there. We've talked in scrutiny, we've talked informally, and we've also talked at full council about BSIP a lot. We've talked about the £48 million worth of capital funding, the share of revenue funding for services and fares, the ongoing partnership with WECA, the infrastructure changes and prioritisation work that will happen, the recruitment drives for drivers, the enhanced partnership, and DRT latterly. We've been talking a lot about demand responsive transport. So, we've talked about quicker buses, new interchanges, shorter journey times, better reliability. So it's fantastic news that despite all of the changes that we've seen in government and all of the risks to funding nationally, we have at last received, back in November, the delayed letter from the DfT, which confirmed the full award of both capital and revenue funding, the second highest award in the country. Hugely significant and transformational for us here in North Somerset. The report's summary goes on in some detail to talk about the key benefits and objectives of BSIP and sets out broadly how the money is going to be spent. For example, 300 new bus stops, 3 new bus interchanges, first and last mile active travel routes, bus prioritisation and traffic signal work along the key arterial routes such as the A38 and A370. And I'll come on to talk a little bit more about that prioritisation shortly in the following paper. The BSIP document sets out the broad targets for the improvement plan. So reducing journey times by 10%, 95% on time of services, a full post-pandemic return to patronage by 2025, increased passenger satisfaction, and working towards zero emissions for buses by 2030. So it's pretty ambitious. The BSIP grant itself can't be drawn down until we've legally made the enhanced partnership, and that will be achieved later this month, hopefully. And the report provides an update on that process, and the timescales for BSIP are set out in section 1.9 on page 4 of the report. One frustration that I have, and I think it's obviously shared by officers, is that despite the delay to the BSIP grant funding decision and confirmation letter, there's been absolutely no change at all to the delivery horizon for BSIP. So effectively it remains unchanged. So we've basically got to spend the money in the next 2 years rather than the next 3 years. It's not easy to spend that amount of money on that number of schemes in such a short time frame. So we've really got to inject pace into the delivery programme, and we've got to move at pace and make some pretty quick decisions about how we deploy it. So it's got to be short, effective delivery. And so the delegations and approvals today reflect that fact, and also will assist officers as they work to achieve that goal. So just a couple more points that I'd point out within this report. I'll just bring your attention to. On page 7, section 3.4, this talks about deals with the sort of patronage, and I think we can't ignore the driver recruitment issues that we've seen recently within the industry. So I think that will continue to be a risk and something that we'll need to keep a close eye on. So yes, we're going to have lots of prioritised buses, and DRT is going to see a fantastic new service operational within North Somerset, but I do still think that driver capacity and availability will continue to be something that we'll want to keep a close eye on. On page 7, section 3.5, that deals with some really encouraging improvements to commercial services. For example, the X1 and X4 services, increased frequency, and the X5 and the X8 being the comeback kids, if you like, of bus services that we lost recently. It looks as though those may be coming back. Page 8, section 3.8 deals with the introduction of DRT, which we've talked about a lot recently. On page 9, it talks about the bus prioritisation schemes, which will also bring benefit to motorists, as it's about improving the flow of traffic. So I often look at this and think, well, with bus prioritisation, the best place to be is sitting on a bus, and the second best place to be is in your car behind the bus, or on a bike, yeah. Page 17, section 3.51, summarises some of the early improvements we should see to specific services, and I'm keen to stress that I want to be doing this, and we need to be doing this, with full participation and passenger feedback, and part of the enhanced plan will be the setting up and the establishment of a bus user forum, and I'm quite keen that we think very carefully about who we would like in North Somerset. There are lots of people that I've come to know quite well since I was appointed to the executive, who are active in the public transport space, who'd be really excellent candidates as members of that forum. On page 17, and I've nearly finished, it summarises DRT. We're all experts on DRT now, I guess. The key rationale for DRT is that it's considered most useful at this stage in areas where we have no bus services or we have failing services. So it's not a silver bullet. It's not something that we can just blanket put across the whole of North Somerset. So I think we have to think about how it's going to be used most effectively. I see it as sort of areas of the map being lit up. So the new prioritised arterial first bus routes, the commercial services, that will sort of light up the blood supply, if you like, and then there's areas of the map that are still dark that DRT will help light up with services that will connect into those commercial services. I think that's probably about it for that first paper. So I'm happy to rattle on to the next one, or we can just stop and find a seconder for those approvals and delegations first before I move on.
I know that Councillor Ashton wants to speak, so I think we'll go there first. First of all, if there anything that officers want to add at this point, those of you in the room, no. So, Steve, thanks for bringing light to where there has been darkness. With that, we'll go to Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, just about, Nigel.
Oh, right. Shall I see if I can turn it up a bit? You'll probably hear drills, that's the trouble. Lots of money, lots of promises, but very little detail. And my concern has been that there's very little mention of rural communities, and they're almost cut off already. This doesn't seem to improve that. And things like bus lanes along Portbury 100, which goes from Portishead to Junction 19, that would probably gridlock both Portishead and the junction. So if you're going to do something like that, I don't know if you've got a timetable already, but surely you would at least wait until the train is running before you do things like that. And does this include a far better provision of home to school transport? It's all part of transport, because at the moment it is just collapsing and is just totally unreliable and causing severe problems.
I can take each of those points,
Steve,
I think.
yeah.
So I might struggle on the final one, but certainly, I mean, I think rural communities being forgotten. I think there's a large part of the BSIP report that covers demand responsive travel, and I think that's where DRT will have the biggest bang for our buck, certainly. So you know, certainly if I think about my own ward in Rington, we've had no real discernible bus service to anywhere for quite a few years. And one of the frustrations, I think, for residents in rural communities like mine is that they're unable to connect into the commercial services. So there's, you know, lots of investment, as Nigel points out, along the A370, the A38, the A369, but it's not going to help if we're unable to get residents to connect into those services. Well, there is a map, I think, within the BSIP report. I don't actually know if it's actually, it is the DRT map actually in the BSIP report?
It's with the papers.
Within the papers, there is a map showing the zone for DRT, and unless I'm very much mistaken, I think it probably covers about 90% of the rural parts of North Somerset. So if you're anywhere within North Somerset, when DRT is fully realised and we've got sufficient drivers and the capacity is there, then you will effectively be able to use DRT a little bit like an Uber and order a bus to your bus stop. So if you're in a rural community that's covered by the DRT zone, you'll be able to order a bus in as little as an hour to come and pick you up and take you from any point to any point within that DRT zone, so you'll be able to connect to all of the commercial services. On the second point around bus prioritisation, I suppose it's a bit of a chicken and an egg in terms of, you know, creating gridlock. I think that we've got 7 schemes that are set to go, and the first of those schemes are not only going to benefit people who are sitting on a bus, they're also going to benefit motorists. So if I think about the intervention in Congsbury traffic lights and along the A370, certainly those schemes along there, I think there's about 3 schemes along there, all of those are going to benefit motorists as much as they're going to benefit public transport users. So the purpose here is not to punish car drivers, it's really about creating a realistic alternative to taking the car. And as I said earlier, I think best place to be is on the bus, and second best place is probably in your car behind the bus. On the home to school transport, I think I might have to refer that to one of the officers. I'm not quite sure if I could look back at Bella for that one. Maybe you could cover that, Bella.
I think the question probably relates to Service 59, where we have been managing that contract. There have been issues in terms of basic service delivery. It's not related to BSIP, but we're aware of the issue and we're dealing with it. But home to school transport, of course, will benefit from the priority that is assigned to buses more generally. And we want to transition as many children and young people onto public bus as we can.
Thank you, Bella. Bridget, do you want to speak before Steve moves on to the next item?
Yeah.
Then Mike.
Thank you. I think that this piece of work is so important, and we have been talking about it for a number of years. But all of us who have worked passionately and committedly on more action on climate change for our area, and since the declaration of the climate emergency, have recognised that there is a fundamental urgency to change and to see opportunities to help residents across the district to leave their car at home on some days, on some occasions, and more frequently. So I'm really excited by this piece of work and can see the amount of work that all the officers have put in to try to deliver a service that really will result in a radical change. The passenger experience needs to be improved and we need to see journey speeds increased as is listed there, and we need to see affordable routes. So I think that there's a lot of positivity there, and now the offer that our residents deserve is that quality of service. For example, in the Backwell area, if the buses, the X1 is more reliable and other surrounding buses, then those children who use home to school transport do have a viable, reliable and affordable service to use to reach from Long Ashton, from Nailsea, from Congsbury, up to get to the secondary school that is their secondary school of choice. So I just think that this is a critical piece of work, and we will need to continue to hold those involved to account, and the importance of the passenger forum is really key because buses are critical to so many elements of our society, from our villages to our towns to our remote communities. Final point is that there is still a live transport and active travel consultation on at the moment on our council website, and this is your opportunity to feed in more of what you want to see. And there's an aspect around first and last mile, which is how do we get to our bus stops, how do we get to our train stations. So thank you, and I would welcome as many people as possible responding to that consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Petty. Mike Bell.
Thank you, Steve. And, obviously, I hope it goes without saying, a really positive report. Great to see the investment and, critically for me, that we're acting quickly, and great tribute to all the officers, both in North Somerset and in the combined authority who've worked so hard to land this approach, the funding, and try and get out there in the field and literally make a difference for people as quickly as possible. I just wanted to just ask for some assurances about what next, really, in terms of bus services, because whilst the bus service improvement plan and the enhanced partnership and some of the schemes that are coming forward are welcome and will absolutely contribute to the long-term sustainability of the bus network, we all know that unless the government does things differently in terms of how bus services are operated in this country, we're just going to keep going round and round in circles, and it is inevitable, isn't it, that services are going to require subsidy. We're going to have continued difficult conversations with private sector operators, and as long as that happens, when we have got such limited levers in terms of influencing and controlling what happens, we're always going to be in this space of having to run to catch up, having to bail out services, having to try and restore things that have been withdrawn by the private sector. So I'd just like some assurances, Steve, in terms of what we're going to continue to do to make the government, make the case to government that the rules need to change, and that if buses are to be a viable alternative for people in the long term, then they've got to have security of funding, and the ability of local communities to deliver services, to design services, and to run them has got to be strengthened, because as long as we're dependent on going cap in hand, as we are time and time again, to private operators whose only motivation is to make a profit, we're always going to be doing so with one hand tied behind our backs.
Well, I'm happy to give you the assurance. I mean, I think the sort of question and answer all beautifully rolled into one there, wasn't there? But, I think the enhanced partnership goes some way to creating a set of binding commitments, but I think you're looking for something that's more meaningful and more deeper and more has more longevity. And I think you're absolutely right that the elephant in the room here is that, in 2 years' time, the money will be spent and the show will have moved on. So I absolutely share your sentiment, and I think that is something we as an executive should discuss and think about how we talk about and formulate a story around what's next.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Mike. I mean, you're right to flag, Mike, that effectively what we're doing now has 2 years to prove it's sustainable. Steve, do you want to speak to the next item? We'll take the two items together when it comes to the vote.
Yeah, sure.
So if you move on to.
Okay, so for this paper, I'm looking for colleagues' approval of the commissioning and procurement plan for the 18 bus priority schemes set out within BSIP. That's the supply, installation and maintenance of the associated ANPR enforcement system, which will help to ensure the scheme and the investment remains deliverable and sustainable over the longer term. We've already discussed the funding envelope for BSIP, the capital schemes to a large extent. A lot of the bus prioritisation stuff will be concentrated on the major bus corridors, the A38, the A370, the A369, plus a number of other locations. The first 7 schemes are all designed and are ready to be put in effectively. The first one is going to be constructed from the 13th of March. That's in Long Ashton. And then there are a further 11 schemes which are subject to procurement and will follow later on this year. So a primary condition of the funding is that we implement a system of enforcement via NPR technology. So that's the cameras, the software, and the back office functions. This is happening not just here, but in parallel with our WECA neighbours, and will help to ensure the free-flowing movement of buses, as we discussed previously, of public transport, reduce journey times, safer highways, and give us some consistency, actually give us a chance to deliver against some of our BSIP goals around, improved reliability and journey times. Most of the cameras are going to be delivered within those first 7 schemes. Some will need more than one set, because there are some quite long stretches. Long Ashton Bypass, for example, is about 3.5 kilometres long. Some of them only look one way, so Long Ashton Bypass, I think the cameras are just looking one way. Some, like in Congsbury, those are bi-directional because obviously there is the bus prioritisation both sides of the scheme. So in summary, we're looking at about 44 cameras, a maximum of 44 cameras across the 18 schemes. And there's an indicative timescale for the procurement set out in section 3.9 on the report. The cost of the scheme to deliver the 44 cameras by the end of March 25 is 1.3 million, about 700,000 of which is capital funding, and the rest is revenue funding for the annual maintenance over the next 4 years. It's obviously, when we talk about sort of enforcement and cameras, people get a bit nervous about it, but this is national policy. It's a requirement of BSIP that we do this. And actually, I would say, why wouldn't we do this? I think it's really important. We're not punishing people for not infringing the bus prioritisation lanes. It's only there really as a deterrent so that we can ensure the integrity of the journey times, and we can stand behind some of our statements about bus reliability. So you can't kind of have one without the other, really. And, without it, I suppose, just going back to Mike's point about what happens after 2 years, once the BSIP money is spent, these schemes will still be in place, and, the pressure would fall on the public purse, wouldn't it, if our journey times went down because we weren't enforcing those lanes. So it does make sense to do it. And that's really it, really. So I'm just sort of looking for a seconder for that, obviously with the recommendations and delegations on the first paper that I covered off.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So thanks for that. And you're right, it's a condition of drawing down on the BSIP funding, basically, isn't it? So we'll take those 2 reports, items 9 and 10, together. Steve, you're proposing. Bridget, you're seconding. Let's go to the vote. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, colleagues. Moving on to I think we're on to item 11 now, are we not? Yeah. Which is the commissioning and procurement plan for capital works at Hutton Moor Leisure Centre. Looking to Councillor Ash Cartman to lead on this one, please, Ash.
Thank you, Steve. So this is the commissioning procurement plan for Hutton Moor Leisure Centre. So this is one of our key leisure centres across the district. We need to refurbish it. We're taking the opportunity when we're doing it to do some other work as well, fixing the lift, not just fixing the roof. And we're also going to make sure the roof is fit for purpose for solar PV, because we want to make sure we can future-proof as much as possible. So I'd like to look for a seconder, but I know my colleague, Councillor Solomon, would like to say a few words in his capacity as Exec Member for Leisure Services.
Yes, it's just to confirm what Ash has just said. This is our biggest leisure centre. In fact, it's one of the busiest leisure centres in the whole of the UK, and it's badly in need of money spending on it. So it's a good investment for the future. So I wholeheartedly endorse this. I'm happy to second it.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Ash. That was no more to add. So anything that officers want to add? No? Any hands up from non-executive colleagues? Anything? Bridget. Councillor Petty.
I promised to be short and sweet, and Councillor Cartman really highlighted the positive aspects that have been put into this report. But I just wanted to really strongly compliment the team on this work and thank them. In our climate work over the past couple of years, we've referred to the spheres of influence, Because there is spending that a council does and decisions that a council does, and then there is how you work with your partners. And when you commission something and write a report about commissioning, talking about the adoption of principles that we as an organisation have recognised and how we would expect partners to step up to that too. So I wanted to celebrate and thank the team for their work that they've put into this report that acknowledges that when we work with our partners, we can ask them, are they stepping up to the challenges around climate change and how important it is to our residents in North Somerset. And I look forward to these works being completed because I know leisure centres are so critically important. In my role in reducing inequalities in our area, I've attended our disability access forums, and I've heard from local residents how challenging they've been finding the lack of reliability around the lift at Hutton Moor, and I see that that's specifically aiming to be addressed in the works being commissioned here. So on behalf of that group, I wanted to take, to bring those voices of those residents who value that facility so much, but do require a functioning lift to use that facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Okay, so I don't think there are any more comments. So that's proposed by Councillor Cartman, seconded by Councillor Solomon. Let's move to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you very much. And in my haste to move to that item, I also forgot to thank actually the BSIP team. Gemma, I see that they've gone. Bella and James and Carl's not here. Although to be fair, in our briefing, I didn't even notice he was in the room, did I? The other day. No, it's really appreciated. Massive piece of work. So thank you to officers as always. Moving on to item 12, commissioning plan for the Pathways to Adulthood service. So it's got the names of Councillor Catherine Gibbons and Councillor Mike Bell. I think Catherine, looking to you to present.
I'm happy to, or we can do a double act, whichever you prefer. As it says, this is a report which is asking you to approve a commissioning plan to tender for the Pathways for Adulthood service, which is currently delivered by Paisley Avenue in Clevedon and the Brandon Trust. It's an incredibly valuable resource which offers short respite breaks to young people between the ages of 14 and 25 and aims to help them develop independence and fulfill their abilities the way we would want for them. A lot of parents that I speak to think we don't have enough of this provision, so it is key that we do tender and continue to deliver this. As you'll see in the report, this was subject to a degree of consultation. It's been to both the adult and the children's scrutiny panels, and we've had a very good councillor briefing on the subject where a lot of councillors were able to ask some searching questions about what we're doing. Personally, I feel that it's important that we have been listening to the young people themselves in what they want, and hopefully this will define what happens going forward. In terms of the actual commissioning process, I just want to reassure people that should the provider change, then obviously, potentially, staff would be tupied across from the current provider. The other thing I should add is that some people have said this isn't a hugely lengthy report, but to be aware that a detailed procurement plan will come to the executive for sign-off by the 30th of April. And I had literally, I think, 20 minutes before this meeting, an email from my colleague, Councillor Petty, questioning the climate change and environmental implications. And obviously in item 7, it says a thorough climate emergency risk register will be completed. So on the basis of your email, I will make sure that this is truly detailed and you have sight of it, because as you've highlighted in other areas, whatever we do, we always bear in mind the climate change implications and try to do what we can to mitigate this. And I'll hand over to my colleague, Councillor Bell, in case he wants to add anything.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Bell doesn't want to add anything. Could you just clarify, you're saying something would come back by the end of April, but I mean, this is likely to be our last?
Yes, to the last exec
to the
member.
Exec member decision.
Exec member by the 30th
yeah,
of April.
okay,
yes.
thanks.
Well, the
just
two
looking
exec
for
members, actually.
I was
No.
just looking for
We'll have a
clarification on
detailed
that one.
plan that will come to exec for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. As you say, thanks to both the ASH and SIPS panels for their input into this process. Okay, so the recommendation is to approve this commissioning plan, so we can proceed to tender. You're proposing, looking for a seconder?
I'm proposing. Can I have a seconder?
Mike will second. Let's go to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Item 13, requests for delegation of the combined commissioning and procurement plan and contract award for the supply of energy. Councillor Ash Cartman, looking to you.
Yep, thank you, Steve. So the context for this report is 2 years ago we were paying about just over £2 million a year for our energy. In the budget for next year it's over £6 million. But not only that, we face very volatile prices. So in that context of striking the best deal for the council, and that deal, by the way, will be for what I'd call ultra-green energy to help with our climate change promises and ambitions, is to delegate authority to our Section 151 officer to strike the best price at short notice if necessary within the parameters of the budget and our desire to be green. And that's what this report does, it delegates that authority. I would like to point out, though, on page 2, just to be clear, it does refer to an energy reduction section below, which isn't in the report. That was an error, just to point that out. We do have an energy reduction plan, it's just not detailed here, but elsewhere. So I'd like to seek a seconder for that report, please, on that decision.
Councillor Petty. Thank you, Bridget. Any non-executive colleagues? No. Bridget, did you want to say something? No. Catherine, sorry, did you have your hand up? No, you were looking to second.
We were both second.
Councillor Havison.
Yeah, just to welcome the decision to make it ultra green. I think it's, again, we need to set an example to the rest of our population. And as I understand it, green tariffs aren't actually any more expensive. In fact, green energy is now a cheapest form of, onshore wind is the cheapest form of energy rather than gas or even oil or coal, never to speak of coal. So, yeah, thank you very much. Very welcome.
Thank you, Corinne. Mark Caniford.
I'm going to just highlight the point which does frustrate me about all the things. I mean, I use green energy I used to use green energy within my business until green energy suppliers let me down because they tag their price to the gas and therefore make huge amounts of profit when gas goes up. So it just frustrates me. I think it's the right thing to do, so I'm not challenging the policy. However, I do like to highlight the fact that we are being stitched over by all these companies, not just the gas companies.
I didn't think that would be the last word after that. Councillor Petty and then Mike.
As I understand it, it's actually government regulations that has these tariffs pinned together. So it is not the producer who's able to decide. I think that these prices are being traded at the same system, and that's why customers are not able to access a better price for the cleaner energy. So I think we should go back to government and ask them to double check their rulings on that. So just in case Mark was implying that the energies producing renewables were the ones trying to keep our prices high, I have a feeling that as I understand it, it's much more based on regulations.
Thanks, Bridget. Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the phrase stitched up has just reminded me of this. I think it's just worth noting as well that the continuing uncertainty is not helpful, is it? And it's not just uncertainty in terms of energy prices, of course, but uncertainty in terms of government policy around energy support. We obviously had to go into this report in the expectation that the government support package for businesses was going to expire in March. We now know there's going to be some further support through to 2024, but nevertheless, we still find ourselves all the time in this nightmarish situation in terms of our financial planning, of not actually knowing what the government's policy is going to be from one week to the next. And so I hope, at the risk of repeating myself in terms of pleas to government, but I hope that one of the things we will also continue to do on energy prices is make representations through the local government association and others to the government that they need to take account of the impact of energy prices on local authority finances, but more particularly give us certainty and confidence so we can plan, because clearly the right thing to do is to plan for the long term, to give us the capability to invest in energy saving measures, and do the right things, as Councillor Havison quite rightly put it, to demonstrate and lead by example to the community. And we're not able to do those things when the government isn't clear about what's happening and is constantly changing the schemes and the funding parameters.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments? I think so. So, Corinne.
Can I just happen to think about it? Of course, community energy could be a really big way forward here. And as I understand it, even our local MP is supporting that. So can I just plead that if there are any projects, to really look favourably upon them and help bring them about in the near future, because that could be one way in which our local energy prices are under our own control, or not that of the Gas Marketing Board.
Okay, thank you, Corinne. Right, should we move to the vote on this one? So, Ash, you're proposing, I think Bridget, you were seconding. All those in favour? Thank you. Okay, right. We've got item 14, 15, 16, and 17. Ash, you're going to speak to those items together. So that's the medium-term financial plan, revenue budget 23-24, the treasury management strategy, capital management strategy, and obviously the fees and charges paper. So over to you, Ash.
Thank you, Steve. I'd like to propose a slight amendment before I start making some comments to the capital strategy paper as well. I think on recommendation E, which is to change it so it reads delegate authority to the section 151 officer for the period 30th of March 23 to 35th of May 23 to approve the procurement plans and commissioning plans. So, and commissioning plans is new, for up to 8 million rather than 5 million for the strategic placemaking development programme. So otherwise it all remains the same. I'm not going to speak for long on the 530 pages in this report, or those 4 reports. I think we've been here before. It's been a hard process to balance the budget with 35 million pounds worth of spending pressures. I think we've done an amazing job, or the team have done an amazing job, and it's through the efficiencies we've found, good planning, prudent financial management, that we've met those budget pressures. We continue to protect the services, and I think we're all pleased, although we've had to compromise given our financial pressures, to continue to be open, fair, and green. There's some changes in here as well, and we have consulted widely, a number of groups and individuals, and as councillors I know we've listened, and there are changes in there. You know, let's be honest, we changed our mind on a few things in response to the feedback that we were making, and that involved some of the funding to voluntary sector groups, and it also involved the closure of the Backwell Recycling Centre as well. And actually, I think we need more people in local politics and national politics sometimes to listen to what the public want and actually respond accordingly to make sure their priorities are reflected in what we do. Now, I think there's going to be a full debate at Council, so I'm not going to make many other comments. I'm just going to open up to questions and comments from other councillors. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Ash. You're right. Obviously, these budget proposals will now go forward to be presented at Council on the 21st. There is a question, though, from Councillor Ashton at this point. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. It's just clarification, really, because, as you say, there's a lot in here. On page 94, it says the total budget for 22-23 is 185,475,000, with 1.5 million still overspending. And yet on page 96, it says the total spending is 179 million, with a budget gap of nil, but with savings proposals still of 4.1 million. Can you clarify the difference between those two? I'm sure there's an answer, but just want to make sure that I'm starting with the same number. Did you get that?
I didn't get the second page reference. If you could repeat the second, I think Amy's saying she can answer anyway.
Page
Mel
96.
can.
Mel. I can see Mel. I see you on screen now.
Mel heard you, Nigel. She can
Mel
answer.
Watts is our head of finance. Mel.
Hello, I can explain the difference. The difference between the 179 million included within the MTFP report is North Somerset Council's revenue-based budget. There's a difference of £6 million to take it up to the £185 million, and that includes the town and parish council precepts. When we prepare our MTFP each year, we remove those because the council can't influence those levels of spending.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Any further comments from non-executive members and exec colleagues? Bridget and then Mike.
I just wanted to support Councillor Cartman in the comments he made around the process we've gone through in developing this very challenging budget that we have in front of us today. I appreciate all the work done by officers and just wanted to highlight, as he mentioned, the process that we've gone through in reviewing different opportunities, assessing different decisions, listening to residents, listening to the citizen panel responses, and then referring to our equality stakeholder group and the officers who work through that work to read through the equality impact assessments, understand where things are risked at high, medium and low, and make decisions based on that. So I think that we should be proud of the difficult work that we've done today in working cross-party and listening to different stakeholders across our whole district to try to deliver what was a very challenging budget. So thank you to the officers all involved who have done that piece of work, but also recognising the work we've done to try to listen to those communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Yeah, seconded, absolutely. Incredibly rigorous process, and thank you very much to you, Amy and Mel, and all the business managers and directors and everyone involved in what has been a really difficult process, clearly. Councillor Ashton, I think, wanted to come back on a point. Nigel?
Yes, thank you. I forgot to answer it first time round because Councillor Cartman mentioned the listening to the decision locally about not closing, I think it was the Backwell recycling skip. But I noticed in the papers that it says the savings that you were intending to make from that, which was, I think, £300,000, that will be rephased. Can you explain that? Does that mean you've just postponed closing it until after the election?
I think my view on that is it has been rephased, but in my view, every council makes a decision on its budget every year when it's presented in front of it. So that'll be a decision for next year, as will everything else.
But that's the only one that you've labelled as rephased.
I think it's the same with some of the children's centres being rephased in terms of the transition to family hubs as well.
You don't sound as convinced as even I am, so I'll take that as you haven't got rid of it.
My view is quite clear, it's not closing. And if a different council in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years decides it wants to do it, that's up for that council. But this council is not doing it. So the question is what would the next council do, or what do the people who aspire to be the next council do?
Yeah, I totally agree, but you could say that about every decision in that case. It's just that this was labelled as rephased. It raised, obviously, doubts. Thank you, anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Yeah, I think the point here is we're presenting a balanced balanced budget, and it will present a balanced budget for approval at full council on the 21st. Any other comments, Mike?
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to make one quick comment and then just one query around the amendment in the recommendation. So the quick comment is just around, can I just thank colleagues and indeed everyone that participated in providing feedback on the budget proposals over the last couple of months, but particularly for responding positively to concerns about proposed reductions in the support available for the voluntary community and social enterprise sector, because particularly in terms of adult social care, the VCSE sector provides an important range of services and support for the community, and frankly it's things which would cost us more money if we ended up having to do them ourselves and to pick up the slack that would have been left behind. So it really would have been a false economy. There's pressure right across the system. We were talking earlier, weren't we, about energy prices and the inflationary pressures, and we know that that's being felt by the voluntary and community sector and indeed faith groups and others as well. So we're all under pressure anyway, and it would have been very disappointing if we'd got to the situation where we would have had to compound that through reductions ourselves in the budgets available. So I'm particularly pleased about that amendment. I just wanted to ask for some clarification on the proposed amendment on recommendation E, which is essentially allowing us a little bit more flexibility in terms of the delegations on the capital programme to reflect money that hopefully will come in terms of government grant but might not between March and May, and I appreciate that that's designed to give more flexibilities, particularly over the election period. I'm just slightly concerned that the wording that you suggested, Councillor Cartman, was effectively enabling the Section 151 to sign off on commissioning and procurement plans during that period, and I just would like some assurance that there will be consultation and engagement with elected members, and particularly the portfolio holder during that process, because clearly it's one thing to say, we'll take the money, thanks very much, and it's another to then potentially sign off on the procurement plan that sets the direction of travel in terms of what we're actually going to spend the money on, and I'd just like some assurance that elected members will be involved in that conversation.
So perhaps I could propose a further amendment to place in that recommendation in consultation with the appropriate executive member.
Yeah, I was going to suggest something similar. So just looking to Nick, that's permissible, isn't it, Nick? It's not.
Chairman, yes, because it's a delegation to the officer will still take the decision. The officer will just consult with people as would be normal.
Yeah. Amy.
Thank you. Just to clarify, it would only be the items in 4.3 as well, not wider commissioning plans for the capital strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy. So, Ash, you're proposing those four in a batch of reports.
Yeah, I'm proposing and there's more than four in all the four reports, but I'm proposing all of them in a batch for recommendation.
Yeah, and looking for a seconder. Mike Solomon. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, okay, I think we can move to the vote then. So all those in favour? Thanks very much. Thanks, everyone. Moving forward now to item 18, which is the Q2 performance management update. I think this is a report from Emma Diaku, our Head of Business Insight Policy and Partnerships. Is Emma online? Emma's not here, but Director of Corporate Services, Amy Webb. Over to you, Amy.
Thank you. So the report is a second quarterly update to the executive on our performance framework. This is against our published corporate plan, which is available on the website. There is also a dashboard available, and that's updated on a quarterly basis with progress and achievements throughout the year, and also contains our key corporate performance indicators. So this is an update. I'm happy to take any questions, but obviously for transparency purposes being brought into this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. So this is for information. Any comments from non-executive members or exec colleagues on this one? Otherwise, I think the contents of the report are noted, if everyone's happy. Is that fine, Nick? Thank you. And thank you to Emma. Item 19, adoption of assets to the local heritage list. Councillor Mark Caniford. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll keep this in really brief. It is just to adopt the asset list. We've done this already once before last year. And the only thing I would like to say is when you read the report that you will find that most of those assets are in Weston currently. There are a few outside Weston now, but that is for no other reason that others haven't been brought forward. But I do now believe that other local councils are working much more towards those important local assets and bring them onto that list. So that's really, really good. And I'd like to thank those, the Heritage Champion and all those who get involved in assessing those assets, because I know a great deal of work goes into that. So it's just for confirmation, it's not everything that's brought forward that is put on asset list, only those which are really do have that importance to our community. So it's really just a support just to get this adoption done, and then we move on to the next list next year, I'm sure.
Thank you, Mark. And as stated in the first recommendation, I'd just like to emphasise my thanks to our Heritage Champion, Councillor John Crockford-Hawley, for his ever diligent work in this area. So thank you, John. Again, not a decision item, I don't think. Oh yeah, sorry. So yeah, we need to go to vote. Mark, you're proposing, presumably? You're proposing, yeah, looking for a seconder. Catherine, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 20, draft local flood risk management strategy. So this is effectively looking for approval from this executive to sign this off to go out for public consultation. Councillor Mike Solomon. Mike.
Yes, as you quite rightly said, this is asking for the approval for the draft local flood list management strategy to go out for consultation. Just so you know that the flood risk management strategy will cover 2023 to 2033. It's a legal requirement, so it has to be done. This report, we hope, has been written in plain English, and we've taken a modular approach to this strategy. The report is going for consultation on from the 9th of February for 8 weeks. There'll be online consultation with face-to-face engagements with towns and parish councils. Information will also be available in the local libraries. So we're seeking endorsement for proceeding with this consultation with a view to bringing it to a consulted strategy back to the executive later this year. And just a few figures worth noting that there are around 2,100 properties at risk of surface water flooding in North Somerset in a 1 to 100 year event. And this is likely to increase, as Bridget will probably confirm, with the climate changes. So it's a very important issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. And I note that in the report, and when we've discussed this amongst ourselves, we've noted that there's obviously also a lot of resident concern around flooding on the highway, even though it's out of scope really of this report. There is a reference to how people can report local issues to the council within the paper, isn't there? So that's thank you for that addition. So looking for a recommendation, the recommendation rather is to approve the draft local flood risk management strategy document for public consultation. Mike, I assume you're proposing. Looking for a seconder. Bridget, thank you. Let's go to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's passed unanimously. Okay, item 21 and 22 are also linked. Mike Solomon, that's you as well. Do you want to take those reports together, Mike?
Yes, I'll take them together, Steve. So again, recommendation is the executive approve the commissioning and procurement plan for the treatment of food waste. We currently have a contract that expires in early 2024, and there's no extension possible to that one. And we need to undertake a procurement process to get a contract in place for the future treatment of food waste. The report requests approval of the commissioning and procurement plan as set out in the details of the report. To give you a bit of background on that, the new laws that have come in to do with collection of food waste, where they have to be collected once a week, it's going to mean that if we don't get in very quickly and get our procurement put in place, we're going to miss the boat, and other councils are going to get in there and will be paying much higher for our services. Hence the reason that we would like to move quickly on this one. And the second part of this is then to delegate to the executive member for neighbourhoods and communities the authority to award the waste transfer station and haulage contract to NSEC. So we have a current contract that expires in early 2024 with no extensions possible on that one as well. Our environmental service company, which you'll know as NSEC, is putting together a business case for the delivering of this service on our behalf, on the council's behalf. And this report requests delegated authority to the executive member to assign the contract to NSEC if the business case is robust. If the business case is not approved, the report requests delegated authority to the executive member to approve a commissioning and procurement plan to go out to market for the provision of food waste transfer and haulage. And these delegations are requested as there is no further formal meeting until June, which would be too late to commence the procurement.
Thank you, Mike. So you were just speaking there to item 22 as well, weren't you?
Yes, as
you say, they're slightly
yeah.
Technical kind of recommendations, but I'm not sure if we've got any comments from any comments that colleagues would like to make on these two reports. Assume we've all read them. It's all in there. In which case, looking for a seconder for Mike. Thank you, Steve. Let's go to the vote. Let's take them together. Items 20, 21, and 22. The recommendations as in those reports. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Item 23 is oral reports from executive councillors. So I'll go around the room, just if colleagues could indicate to me if they wish to say anything at this point. Lots of shaking of heads. I would like to just mention one thing, which is obviously it goes without saying that all our thoughts are with those in Turkey and Syria caught up in the truly devastating earthquake, Monday's earthquake. I think the death toll is up to about 12,000 now, but obviously that's going to rise, isn't it? And I think our thoughts, especially with those people in North Somerset who might have friends or family members in the region. I don't think there's yet a disasters emergency committee appeal, but if you go to the DEC website, there are, I think, a dozen or so UK-based NGOs who are already accepting, obviously, donations to support the relief of in the aftermath of that terrible event. So our thoughts are with, I'm sure I can speak for all the executive in this, our thoughts are with those affected. Okay, no more oral reports. Item 24, urgent business. Nick? No urgent business, so I therefore declare the meeting closed. Thank you.